Hey, everybody, this is Liz from Augusta, and today I have a very special person with us. His name is Chuck Fott, and I'm going to let him tell you where he is from.
So I currently am in Mooresville, North Carolina, but I am originally from Columbus, Ohio, where I was in law enforcement for about 13 years. Um, then I did some private security contracting for a couple years, and then now I'm here with Augusta.
Well, that was all in a nutshell of your entire life. Do you have family?
Very quickly. I do. I have married to my wife. We've been together 17 years. Married, it'll be 12 years this summer. And then I've got two boys. I have an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old, and they're both
Wow.
getting ready to they're getting ready to turn 9 and 11 here in the next couple months. So they're about 22 months apart. Um, so they're a handful. I will
Yeah,
say they are a handful. They're like me, man. They're big sports people, big busy bodies. They enjoy being active and doing different things. So they keep us busy around here for sure.
fantastic. At this age, they still like you, still love you.
They do, they do. It's funny, like, I can see my 10-year-old starting to kind of get into that, I call it that independent stage where, like, he still likes us, but you can kinda tell that he's kinda getting to where he's cool and he thinks he can be a little bit more independent. He can be outside longer when normally we do, like, street lights come on, you come inside, it's dark at that point, and he's like, "Well, I'm getting kinda old, dad." Like, "Well, son, you're still only 10." But the
Yeah,
8-year-old is all love. He wants to hang out with us. He's still like he hasn't lost it yet. So we try to
that's
cultivate
awesome.
that as much as possible. Yeah.
I remember when my son was 14 and it was like a switch flipped and he became this other person. And now
Mhm.
he's back to his awesome self. So it takes a minute, but they get there.
Yeah.
So
Good.
tell me a little bit about your childhood, where you were from and how you grew up, and then we'll get to the man you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've got two brothers and a sister. So there's four of us total. We pretty much lived our entire lives in Columbus, Ohio. Outside of like my first year, I lived in Augusta, Georgia, with my obviously just my me and my mom and dad at that point. But then we came back to Ohio. My dad has owned family businesses, so like my grandparents started them back in like the 50s and 60s. Had multiple different things, and then in '75 they started carry outs like convenience stores,
Mm,
and we had a whole bunch of those around Columbus, one on campus for Ohio State, and that's the one my dad managed. And then as my grandma got older and aged out, my dad kind of ran all of them. We had a couple left when I was growing up in high school, in middle school, and then in high school he got rid of all of them, sold them off. CVS came in and bought like a whole corner of the neighborhood right there on campus, and so they bought like my dad's store. There's a Burger King, um, and a gas station, and they just bought them all out. So that was nice for my father to finally kind of just be done with the family business. And my grandmother could finally, she was 80 something still working.
wow.
So she was ready to be, yeah, she's 101. She'll be 102 in May, and she's still rocking solid. Lives by herself, like still great. But she finally got to retire. You know, in your 80s, you're working hard still, more or less managing my father because he's
Yes.
just like I am. But so yeah, so did that. I was big into sports growing up. Very active. Played competitive baseball. My brothers played baseball. So like our whole life was my mom and dad shuttling us from city to city to do sports and traveling and going to different states to play baseball tournaments, football, wrestling. Like it really didn't matter. Like we just kept playing sports. My youngest brother, though, is totally different. He is a
Hmm.
software engineer. Um, so he's fancy and smart and all of those things that I am not. So he's into computers, and so he gets the phone calls from my kids like, "Hey, let's call Uncle George and figure out how this works," because Dad has no clue.
I love it.
So yeah, so it was the standard. We wrestled and broke things, and my dad had to repair multiple holes in the wall because we were fighting and wrestling. And I mean, we on the
Mhm.
stairs. Like I remember still a whole big like whole side of the wall pushed in at the like our stairs went down. There was a landing, then it went the other direction down, and there was just for I feel like 2 years there just repetitive repairs going on at the bottom of the stairs. So we were rough kids, always fighting and wrestling each other. So, but it was good. It was
So
good. Both
how
my
how
parents still
your
there.
parents go ahead, yep. Your
Yeah,
parents
yeah, they're both still there. They were great parents.
I love it. So how did you end up in law enforcement? Did you go to college first?
So I tried college multiple times, right? So it just wasn't for me. Um, so I actually got into it. I worked for like Napa Auto Parts, just delivering auto parts. Moved up, worked the warehouse, moved up, became like a supervisor pretty quickly. When I was 19, I was the supervisor of all the night drivers. I delivered out of Columbus, and we delivered all over the state. And like I was already basically, a supervisor at 19 making 40 grand a year. And I was like, well, there's nothing else for me. I need a
Mhm,
job. Like I started thinking more long term, and my dad started, well, hey, we gotta kind of, what else are you gonna do? Are you gonna go to school? Are you gonna do this, do that? Because my dad went to college, my mom went to college, my grandmother went to college, like they all went to school, and I did not. So I was like, well, I'll try something else. So I just randomly applied for the state of Ohio, and I started in the prison system. So I got a job as a corrections officer, just working at 20 years old. I went to the academy, and I was working in prisons. Like I worked in the intake prison, and it was a
mhm,
maximum security prison. So half of it was intake, half of it was maximum security. And then we had like a mental health unit, male facility where I started. And then I just kind of started moving up through the state and doing different positions. Tried school again,
mhm,
even like the school that like they partner with, like, oh yeah, you don't really even have to come to class. Just it was before like online and virtual was like a big thing. They
mhm,
catered like to state employees. I did that for a quarter, and I was like, this is still not for me. Didn't even have to pay for it, and it was still not for me. Like I just realized like I'm gonna learn by doing things, not
mhm,
sitting in a classroom. Um, like I had a lot of good leaders. Then I joined, it's called SRT, Special Response Team. Once I transferred to a women's prison, because I lived closer to that one. So
mhm,
I tried that, which was a whole different world there. And then I just promoted up through. And as I gained, I started working for different leaders and things like that. But the part that was really telling for me is like I just didn't want to do that lifestyle, right? Like
mhm,
um, I mean, I was working 60 and 70 hours, and you get into this mindset of like I'll be honest, I was a terrible person. Like I judged everybody. So like when you get into like law enforcement, you have to then learn how to interact with people. You've got to be able to quickly decide like who's a threat, who's not a threat, all these different things. You have to be able to read people. You have to go like I went through investigation courses, all these different things, and I just like it became this um it's like a brotherhood like anything else, but it's not a positive environment overall.
mhm.
Just dealing with negativity from start to finish, and it wore me down. And some people are okay with it, and they do great, and they have no problems. Over the years, it just became this work came before family and stuff like that. So I had to make a change ultimately. But like I just applied one day, like
Hmm.
government job, great benefits, retirement at 48. Like it was just like that was the sole reason for me getting into it. Like it was literally, it paid, it started at 15. After 3 years, I would be at $20 an hour, retire at 48, guaranteed pension, guaranteed paycheck. Like I just, insurance was like $25 a pay period for a family. Like
Hmm.
it was crazy, crazy cheap, good, government job. And then, like I said, it just kind of started from there. And then I transitioned out after 13 years.
My next question will tie into later, but you were 20 years old. So when you would intake, I almost said clients, when you would intake the prisoners, were you there to merely herd people, or were you actually there to bring them in and help rehabilitate them, or was that a whole different section? So the reason I'm asking is, did you have to actually help mold people at that point, or were you just intaking and it was very systematic?
And very systematic. And I'm a big systems person. I love policies. I love procedures, guidelines. And that's all it really is when you work the intake, and even on the housing side, where it was like where they live there, like there got guys who've lived there since '89. And this was like the mid like 2006 to 2013 when I was at that prison. And it was very much just they came in and we were just there for security to maintain um, kind of just the overall flow of the institution as well as safety for like the
Mhm.
different people. But when they came in, it was all about getting their medical checkups, their mental health evaluations, what kind of services they need, social services, things like that. And then they went to the housing units, and then that's where we really kind of just we got to see their true colors because there's a difference, right? So, like in their housing unit, when they're amongst their friends and other inmates, they'll act totally different than when they're around a social worker and they're trying to get something.
Mhm.
Um, so it just became this like I really had to learn really quick because at 20 years old, 21 years old, like I had no idea. Like I didn't
For
understand
sure.
that world. Um, so like I had to learn real quick, like, okay, these people, not all of them, like, and I tell everybody, like, not every person that is a criminal that's been locked up for a felony or anything like that that's gone to prison is a terrible person. And if you believe that, you're wrong. And that's what I thought in the beginning, to be honest. Like that was my thought process. Um, but you're wrong. Like people do things that they shouldn't do, or drugs get them caught up, or they like we had people that were drinking and driving and killed somebody. Like no, obviously you shouldn't drink and drive, but that could happen to a lot of people. There's a lot of people that have 5 or 6 beers and drive home. Um, and that'll throw you over the legal limit. And if you have an accident, you're going to go to prison for vehicular homicide. And then, you have the other people that are just terrible people. Um, so we just, at that point, when you're in the security side of it, as an officer, a lieutenant, a captain, kind of like where I was at on that side, it's all about just housing, keep them safe. There's zero rehabilitation at all.
Mhm.
It's all just lock them up, house them, and keep other people safe and the security of the facility. Then
Mhm.
you have the other side, which is the social services side, which
Mhm.
I
So
never I
so
never
you
went into.
So you never saw the end of that process. So all you ever saw was the dark side, the work, the beginning of it, the
Yeah.
putting them in prison, but you never got to see the end if there was positive results in any of their lives.
Yeah, we never really because it wasn't really our like, it wasn't our lane, right? Like, we saw
Mhm.
that over the years, there were some guys where I'm like, "Okay, hey, this guy became an certified HVAC tech." Those things, but I never facilitated any of it.
Mhm.
Um, and my that was never my role, so I never honestly concerned myself with it a whole lot. And then they would, obviously after however many years, they would leave, and then that would be it. But you would see some guys like you would see the change and the transition over the years, um, because there were times like they don't close, like prisons don't close. So like I'm working 60, 70 hours a week, and I'm spending more time with people that like killed people and
Right.
murderers than I am with my own family.
Right.
You just start to interact with them, and then you start to learn a little bit more about them, and then you start to really learn, like that's where I really learned like street smarts, I guess you would say, common
Mhm.
on how to read people, how like what you know like I took all kinds of classes at work, that they gave to us, and investigator class, all these other things that the different roles I took, and none of them taught me anything close to what an inmate on the streets that was homeless that had to figure out how to really hustle and grind. They taught me more at such a young age compared to what I read in some outdated book.
Mhm. Which I would say became invaluable for you later, in the
For
things that
sure.
we'll get to. So, how many years were you there, and did you actually retire from there?
I did not retire. I worked there. I stopped in October of 18 and I started in September of '06. So 12 years and 2 months, 3 months, something like that. So
So what
about 12 and
caused
a half years is what it ended up being.
Okay. What caused you to leave there? Burnout?
I came to, yeah, burnout, and I came to a point in my life where, and I had transferred in. I was a supervisor. I was on the admin side. I was Monday through Friday, um, but I still was on SWAT. So like
Mhm,
we were still doing, like I was still going to facilities for disturbances. Um, I was still doing things that were a little bit, I guess I would say, like dangerous. Like
mhm,
I don't know, dangerous wasn't isn't really. I would never. What I did, yes, was dangerous, but like I never. I always felt safe. But
mhm. Sketchy.
like it's yeah, like when you go into a an area that's got 150 people that half of them will never leave prison, they don't really care, and there's only four of you on a squad.
Mhm,
Like I guess that would be dangerous to some people, but um, we had a lot of tools and resources that would keep us safe. I guess you could say. Um, like we got to play with a lot of cool toys like flashbangs and grenades and things. But
yeah, fun.
yeah, but like I just got to the point where like, and like I said, a cushy job, admin got job. I worked on the in the financial department as a supervisor managing like $32.5 million, and like the whole institution's budget. It was easy job. Um, but it just became this like over the years, I was so burnt out. Like I said, it wasn't where I wanted to go long term for the rest of my
Mhm,
life. Um, I just hit this breaking point where, like, I'd say probably in like 16 or 17, my family didn't come first. Like, I put the job first, I put myself first. And it just came to this point where I was like, something's got to give. And that like, I just hit rock bottom. I drank too much. Um, like, one time I tell everybody, like one time I went to work and I had 15 beers and went to work
hmm.
and carried a, a loaded 9 millimeter. Like it's not a good idea.
Nope.
Um, so like I just hit this point where it was going to be either keep working this job or at some point my wife, who's amazing, would not tolerate my behavior, and it's not what I wanted for my children.
Mhm,
So like you just have to find this point where you have to make a decision, like, is it the job and the lifestyle that comes with a 24/7 job out there, just around people that really have the same mindsets. When you're around people all the time more than your family, they become your family, but they're
mhm.
not the people that have your best interests in mind
Right.
and at heart. So like you just come to this realization, like, man, I'm working third shift, or I'm getting phone calls at 2 a.m. like, hey, we got to go here, there's a situation, or we got to do this, hey, there's an escape, or hey, there's this hostage situation, and you're going in there and doing things, and you're just like, man, that I don't want this. Like
Mhm,
my kids were still, they were still young, they were 4 and 6. um and it was just like, I'm done. I got to find something else. So we actually sold in 18, we sold everything. And when I say
mm,
everything, like we had like maybe 5 or 6 like Rubbermaid totes, like the 55-gallon totes, um, in our clothes. We sold everything, bought a camper, and traveled for a year. Like just took a year-long vacation, sold our house, just downside, just left,
so she must have
recalibrated
been
our
on
life.
board. She was on board with
Mhm.
that. So had she given you an ultimatum of some kind?
Yeah, essentially, it was like kind of pick or choose, like which way are you going to take your life. And I had a conversation with one of my friends, and I'll never forget. His name is Chad Kelly. And like I was not a believer in God, like, and I I just wasn't. Like I had gone, my wife had always gone, and like he's like, dude, listen, your life is a train wreck. You're gonna lose your family. You're gonna lose your job. Like you can't go to work drunk. Um, every single weekend, I was out from sun up to sundown. I was drinking beer. It wasn't like during the week. I didn't have to have it all the time, but when I did, it was a case or a fifth of whiskey, and that's what I did.
Mhm,
Um, and the whole family just got put on the back burner. So like I had to choose, and I was just like, well, obviously, like I'm at the bottom, and like I said, I'll never. It was August 10th, and Chad Kelly just was like, Chuck, you're gonna fix yourself, your way, or how about you come talk to me and we'll do it my way. And he ran a recovery center,
okay.
for alcohol and drugs and things like that. And like I didn't necessarily feel, I was like, well, I don't need alcohol every day or anything else, but it was faith based. And he's like, hey,
I see.
let's try it God's way. Let's do this. And I was like, let's do it. Like
Mhm.
I've got nowhere else to go but up. So then I
Mhm.
started, kind of investigating my faith and getting into the Christianity. And just over the next few weeks, it really, I was like, man, this like all makes sense. It feels good. It's right. It all just kind of came together. And then over that next year and a half, it just became this like, hey, like I don't want to be that person, but I got to get out of that environment because
Mhm.
that's who I am. Like
Right.
that's the person I was, and I had to cut it and separate it. And that's kind of what got me to where I am now is like just kind of diving in, and that one conversation with Chad like really turned my life around.
Mhm. So, did your wife become a believer at that time, or was she already?
She already was like, so we went like, and it's like we went to the same church like while we were from pretty much the day we started dating in 2006. Like we went to this church not every weekend. Once we got married, then we kind of started going, and I didn't pay any attention. I could care less. Like I was just there like to hang out, like
Yep.
100% transparency. Like I was just checking the box. Um,
Mhm.
I liked her family. We would go out to eat after that sometimes. Like it just wasn't. She was in there and I wasn't.
Mhm.
I was
Yeah.
just a body in a seat.
Okay, so you moved to another state, is that correct?
Yep. Correct. Yep. So now we traveled and then now we're down here in North Carolina.
North Carolina. So, let's jump all the way to this. How did you even
Yep.
hear about Augusta?
YouTube, right? So like I was in private security. We went back to how I was in private security and I was like, I don't want to do this. But I had the background to get a good regional manager job, right? So
Mhm.
it was more like I gotta find a job to provide for the family. So I found that, but the whole time I'm watching these videos from Mike and Jonathan from Florida Turf Pros and like just Brian's Lawn, just kind of watching everything. But Mike only was the only one to talk about business really.
You're right.
And I knew enough about business from my father to know that like your lawnmower doesn't matter. Like you got to know the business side in order to be good at anything and to be profitable and have a
Right.
good business. So um, I had always ran like a small business that I started in 2010, like 10, 15 customers on the side, just something. And I was like, I want to get back into it. So that's kind of where I started watching Mike, and then he posted a video. It was like 4.5. And again, like we're believers and Christians, and like we've been praying, like, where does our life go now? We were very unsettled. We were living in a rental. We just didn't really know where our life would go at that point. I had good jobs, but no direction. Knew it was what we didn't want to do, praying and all that. And then Mike posted his video. It's 4.5 minutes long, something, and it was about like be the next Chick-fil-A or something. And it was
Mhm.
like he was looking for that first call for general managers. And so I told my wife, and I was like, "What do you think?" And she's like, "Well, we want to move south. Let's see what happens." I'm like, "Okay." So we did, and we didn't know the locations. And it ended up being Dix Hills or Redmond. And I was like, well, I'm not moving to the West Coast. Like that's too far.
Mhm.
So we weren't entertaining that side of it. And I was like, well, we're definitely not doing New York City. Like we're not doing Long Island. So like we were like maybe the Redmond option, right? So like after we found the second was that, and he's like, well, we may have Mooresville, North Carolina. I was like, well, now I'm interested, So and then that was a Thursday. Did the interview, and then he sent me an email Friday or Saturday, filled all that out, and then Monday he offered me the job.
Wow. So I'm on this
Mhm,
end, and we decide that we're going to open multiple locations. Let's open five.
mhm.
Let's open them in these different places. And he threw out this thing to whoever, and I was just blown
Yeah.
away. You're just going to anybody. And then he gets all these floods of applications. And was your interview just a Zoom call? Like you never met this person?
Yeah, I know. No, I knew nothing. I knew nothing about Mike, right? Like other than YouTube, and like I'd never met him. I had never anything. So, like I said, I applied on Thursday. He sent me the stuff on Saturday. Zoom call. That's all it was. And then Monday he offers me the job on Zoom. Everything was done on Zoom. I had never met him, never talked to him. Me and my family come down to North Carolina. He offers me the job. And this is like mid December, and we're starting February 1st. So I've got to like pick my family up. We come down over New Year's, pick a house, and move down there 3 weeks later. So all in about 5 weeks, I went from
Yeah.
a Zoom meeting, applying on YouTube, a Zoom meeting, to moving down here, starting a job. Like, hey, is this guy real? Like, this is YouTube. Like, is this going to be a real
No
job
kidding.
or what? And then it was, and then here I am.
So
And
there
I was
had
the
to
general
be
manager at Mooresville.
Okay, so there had to be some kind of, okay, you're good at reading people. Obviously, he's good at reading people, but there had to be some moment of confirmation or some moment that, like, the final thing that cinched the deal, like, we're going to do this.
Yeah. So like, again, like I did, once I applied, like I did research, like I had, did all the Google searches, figured out all the different, Mike's in a million things. So like he's very easily trackable, I
Right.
guess you would say. Like there's nothing hidden. You can tell his businesses and all his videos and things like that. So I felt pretty comfortable in that sense. And like I'm a pretty decisive person. Like, oh, yeah, this looks good. Let's go. Like, we'll figure it out. Like I have this kind of like short little phrase. I wouldn't call it a quote, but like a phrase that I kind of live by, and it's like, don't be scared. Like, you can't be scared to make a decision. You can't be scared of the repercussions. Like, if you think of it logically and you do your due diligence, it's a quick decision and you move on. Your gut reaction is typically always going to lead you in, at least in the right direction. You just have to then make sure you stay on the path of that direction. And as I was talking to him, like, he was easy to talk to.
Hmm.
Mike is very easy person, and like I'm a big body language person, so like he's engaged, he's interacting, like it very appealing to me. And then like what really got me is it wasn't just about the job. He asked
Hmm.
my family, how is your family gonna react to this? Like, are they on board? Like in that at that time, and it still is, like that's important to me. Like work life balance and family is like my number one thing because I didn't, like, I've missed birthdays and different things because of
Right.
work. Like, and I just refuse to do those things now. And he was like, yeah, no, that's awesome. That's great. So like it just kind of hit that. And then being a Christian and like the timing lined up well. Um, he called one of my references, and then my
Mm.
reference was like, "This guy's awesome, Chuck. Is this going to happen?" And I'm like, "If he's calling you, Rob, I'm fairly confident that it's probably happening at this point." Um, but it was just more. It wasn't like it just wasn't a job. Like there was more to it. Like
Yeah.
we talked about developing people and leading people, and like that was important to me at that stage of my
Hmm.
life, and it's what got me like, okay, hey, there's more to this than just mowing grass. Like
Hmm.
the business side, the changing people's lives, things like that. Like, and that's what's important to me. And it just
Hmm.
aligned with everything I wanted.
Yeah. And was your wife in full support of this?
Yeah, like once she saw, she's like, oh wow, okay, this is real. I'm like, yeah. She goes, all right, let's do it. Um, and she worked remotely. She at that time she was just a recruiter for like the Ohio part of the Ohio market, like regional market, and she worked from home, so she was virtual anyway. So like it didn't really matter where she worked at per se, just as long as she was close to the Midwest. Um, and she was like, well, I mean, now's the time. Like, I didn't have a job that, like I said, it was private security. I didn't want to do it anyways. So she was like, you've always wanted to do lawn care again. I'm like, yeah, let's do it. So we did it.
Yeah. So, people that know us at all know that we've done a lot in a very short amount of time, and it is
Yes.
100% what you just said. You don't be afraid. You believe you should move in a certain direction, and you go. And if it's wrong, you pivot and go another direction. So, you were one of the
Absolutely.
very first GMs. And tell me from there till now, this is going to be a whole lot in one package, but you are
Mhm.
now the regional manager. Tell us how long that timeline has been and your development of locations and what you've done in that timeline business wise.
Yeah, so we opened up Mooresville February 1st of 2021, and that's where I started as a general manager. First year we grew it to 300,000. This year we're just over 400,000. And then as we developed that, there just became this need of, hey, we're going to start a different model in Augusta. like an executive model for someone that maybe comes in with a little bit more money that wants to start multiple locations. So as me and Mike kind of discussed it, it just became this. Well, hey, I think you'd be a great regional manager, and it just kind of developed over this past summer in 22. And Mike could tell like I was bored. Like to be honest, like it just
Too
I
easy.
personally think being a yeah, like I just didn't feel challenged. And
Hmm.
I personally just wasn't challenged for my own personal growth and I wanted more and like I needed a little bit more um I guess things to do, you could say, just
Yeah.
because I do move so fast. Like that's why I like Augusta because it's so fast. Like I can always move and pivot. And so then over the summer, we developed this plan to then October 1st become the regional manager. And then there was also a need for coaching as well. Lee was doing coaching calls and sales, and it was becoming a lot there. So then my role transitioned to now regional manager. We started 4 new locations here in North Carolina. So now there's 8 corporate locations now. So we have the 2 in Washington, 1 in Connecticut, and then there's 5 here in Charlotte. And then so I oversee those as well as doing coaching calls the other half of the time. And and that's with the franchisees where they get their coaching calls and they can call us and we kind of coach them through their business and help them on their hangups and things like that. Um, and then to be honest, like it could change this summer again. Like it just
Totally.
it develops so the way that we are growing, it's just so fast. So it went from GM to regional with Mike only had 3 locations, and then there's 4 Mount Vernon, and then there's 4 new ones, and then it just becomes this thing. It just grows.
And all of this happened within the space of what, 2 years?
Yeah, two. It's been 2 years now. I've been with Augusta for a little over 2 years.
Okay, so let's break some of that down a little bit because what you talked about in the beginning, what you did is what some people don't do in a lifetime. And a lot of that is
Mhm,
because of, their personal growth and the way they're wired
mhm.
and everything. But tell me at that location when you became a GM, what did you actually do? What did you build from nothing? Was there nothing? And what did you build it up to, staff wise? You already stated the revenue, but what was a
Mhm.
day-to-day like in that business?
Yeah, so when we started, it was actually a location that was already up and running. For a gentleman named John had started it, but he was older. He was already retired, wanted to retire. Um, so he had some customers, but then when he left, most of those customers left us. Like we ended up having like 12 or 15 customers, and that was it. Prices were bad, all those things. So when I started, I did have 12 or 15 customers. Um, so I did all the work, but almost immediately, like we were pumping about $100 a day into marketing, trying to grow it as quickly as possible, and that's what we did. Like I hired my first employee probably the second week of March. So I went to training the first week of February, worked through all of February alone, started getting jobs, hired a guy. Now we're doing projects and mowing. And then by mid April, I had 4 people plus myself, just because we just got so busy and ramped up so quickly, to where by May, we did 54,000 our first May, after being open. So then just transitioned doing estimates and things like that, still working in the field. And then in May, I did get out of the field temporarily just because the estimates, like we did 250 estimates in that month of May,
Wow.
which would be tough to do any other kind of work, really.
Mhm.
You're doing, 60, 70 of them a week. And then through the summer, had a good group of guys, really good core group of guys. And then in September, it honestly kind of fell apart. Not for bad reasons, but like one guy left. He was a mechanic and was in the army, just finished his schooling. So he went, and Mooresville's like the hub of NASCAR.
Mhm.
So like there's all these race teams. So he left and went to be a mechanic at a NASCAR race team, which I knew he was trying to become a mechanic. So, but he gave me 6 good months.
Mhm.
Another guy left and became a foreman, for a steel factory. So like getting better, but like all left on good terms. They just got different jobs, and then it was end of season, and now we're trying to hire. So we kind of had to almost limp through the end of the year, and honestly missed some projections and lost some revenue because we just couldn't maintain it with the crew we had.
Mhm.
Um, and I hadn't really figured it out yet, to be honest. Like, what was a good employee in lawn care? I knew in law enforcement I
Right.
had hired lots of people, um, but not in lawn care until I could kind of develop the systems, and get what I found like are the traits I'm looking for in somebody to mow grass, which they change all the time. And you kind of what depending your crew will dictate what you need, experience versus not experience. If you have a bunch of experienced guys, you can hire some non-experienced guys because they can be trained up while they're by the experienced guys and stuff like that. Um, and then I was very much systems, which is what Augusta gives you.
Mhm.
So I just followed the systems to a T. Like if command center or Mike was put out on the videos like, hey, this is what we do, then that's just what I did. And if I
So
knew it was
two
successful with other people, I just did it.
so two things about that. If you were a guy on your own doing your lawn care like you were before with your few uh, customers, could you have gotten that far that fast? Number one. And number two, what made you as a GM different than a business owner?
So I personally, I guess you could have grown your business like that, but for me personally, I don't think so because like command center can answer the phones, which is your number one bottleneck in your hang up.
Mhm.
Like if you're answering 10, 15, sometimes I'm going to guarantee 20 call, 25 call, whatever it is from when you got 150 customers, like plus new leads coming in, like if you break that down, that's 70 calls a week. That's at least 10 new leads coming in for people wanting estimates a day.
Right.
And
Mhm.
I'm very again like a work life balance. So like I don't want to answer my phone after 5 o'clock, but I know command center's still working, so they're going to answer it for me.
Right.
Um, emails, like just all the payroll, like stuff that you have to either hire somebody for and know how to do and be responsible for. And like I can do all the things that command center
Right.
does, but it's
Right.
going to be nowhere near as efficient, and it's cheap because I'm gonna have to hire somebody, and if that person leaves, now I'm still stuck in a lurch again, and I
Right.
have to learn. I have to do those things. So I personally don't think people
Okay.
can, but you've got to be very disciplined. You'd have to hire the right people. Whereas from day one, command center just takes it.
Mhm.
If you're in the full service and the growth
Mhm.
model and that model, like it just allowed my stress to be significantly
Mhm.
lower because it just took a lot of things off my plate that I didn't have to worry about. And
Mhm.
again, like I had just moved here, so I already had stressors on the personal side of
Right.
getting my kids integrated into school. We had no friends down here. We didn't have a church. We didn't have like all those different things. And it allowed me to focus more on that side as well and not just be like, hey, I got to work 90 hours a week.
Mhm.
Um,
So
and
your
Command Center was
advantage,
able
if
to
you
take
had
that.
been a business owner, was that you had somebody doing part of it so you could go out there and sell and grow fast.
Exactly. And that's the thing. Like, and as a GM, you're not treated any differently. So the location is the same. So, like, the only difference is I don't have to, I don't sign the legal documents. Like Mike signs those on his corporate locations. But outside of that, like I have the same roles and responsibilities of any other business owner. Um, buy everything. I make hiring decisions, do the banking. I do everything that any other owner or franchisee would do. But I have command center behind me to do all of the admin things that I don't have time to do
Mhm.
because of I'm selling. I'm out, hanging door hangers or knocking on doors or things like that.
Yeah, so the second part of that question then, what makes you different than an owner as a GM? Is it
Are you
that
meaning like personally or
no,
just
no,
in
no,
Augusta?
like the position. So the owner puts up the money, the owner buys the
Mhm,
location, the owner's signing the main documents for the business. But does he
mhm.
hand over the reins to you to run it, or is he involved every day?
Yes. So, for example, Mike has 5 locations in North Carolina and has been here for 1 day for 2 hours of that day. Everything else, like, Chuck, here's the keys to the car and let's go, right? So, he has handed everything over to me as a GM. That's the way he does it, which is why I like it so much. It
Hmm.
is his business that I can tailor within the systems to suit me and my like you could ask Mike as the owner right now, like, what is the daily schedule for Mooresville? Like, how do we have it? He has no idea.
Right.
because he trusts me enough to run the business. It's producing the numbers that it needs to, and now we're in profit mode. And then he'll start to, the profits will go up and all that because you got to build it, and growth kills and takes all sucks cash, right? So it becomes this freedom that I have as a GM, that I run it just like as if I was the owner.
Got
I
it.
make insurance decisions. I add all the vehicles for insurance, and if it's too high, I go and try to get new rates for us. I have all the storage units lined up. Like, I buy all the trucks, the equipment, everything that an owner would do. Mike has given me the authority and the keys to do it all for him. Like, we started these 4 new locations, and Mike's never been here. He doesn't even know where they are. He knows the name of a town, and that's it. Um, I hired all the GMs there
Right.
now, like, and they're going to run it the same way with my guidance. Um, and that was kind of the role. The reason he created the role is he knows he's now so busy that he needs somebody to run his corporate locations.
Right. And
He
so
just is too
how would
busy.
the pay structure be for NPMs? Receive a salary and then some sort of incentive for the businesses as if they were owners? How does that work?
Yep. So they all get incentives. It's all incentive based, right? So they get a base salary, and then depending upon what stage the business is in and how much involvement there is, they get a different portion of profit sharing. So,
I
like,
see.
Mooresville GM gets a little bit less on the profit share because they're already established. They have a customer
I
base.
see.
It's a developed business. The new GMs get a little bit more profit sharing as a percentage, because they're starting it from the ground up.
Right.
And that's once they hit 500,000. So, like, in the beginning, we're trying to grow it. So they get revenue bonuses, which
Okay.
then once they get to a certain revenue marker, it transitions over to profit sharing, and they get a higher profit share because they're doing all the hard work. Like,
Right.
they're getting the customers, they're starting the location.
Right. And then all of those locations, do they come and train at the corporate as if they were a franchisee and learn everything that a business owner would learn?
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the benefit, right? Is like, what I loved about it when I was a GM is I went out to Bellingham and I trained like every other owner. I was a part of a franchisee training group. Command center treats me. I don't even know if half the command center staff even know that some of these locations are corporate. Like,
I
they
don't think
interact with
so.
us exactly. Yeah, like, especially the new ones, they just treat them as just a location, which is great from an ownership standpoint, like for
Right.
an employee trying to feel some ownership, and puts a
Right.
little bit, they can put a little pride into something, like, hey, I'm building this and I don't get treated different. Like, I don't have like a crutch. There is
Right.
no, I get this crutch and this. No, it's, you're treated the same, your needs are the same, and then you are trained exactly the same, and you have the exact same resources that every owner has, the Facebook group, coaching calls, like all of those things.
Mhm.
So,
One thing that Augusta does is they look at people that have talent and they know that they won't be able to keep them if they don't develop some sort of position for them to move into. And
mhm,
you became bored with the one location. You never voiced that, but we knew the quality of person that you were. And so Mike said, we have to do something to give him more challenge. And so we were brainstorming how we could do that. And then he had the idea, well, what if we had a whole bunch of locations? I don't have the ability or time. He has the ability, but not the time
mhm,
to go to all these locations and build them up. But he said Chuck knows how, and he goes, if we could prove the model that somebody could start from nothing in a location and build it up and follow the systems from the very beginning, we'd be able to prove the model. And now, if we do several of them at the same time, we can actually put it out there as an executive model for, say, a business owner who has, a lot of capital that it has to put somewhere. Could that person give several $1 million, just pour it into, say, 6 locations, purchase them all at the same time, hire one person, and that person hire everybody, run them all from nothing. And the way to trial that was to take somebody like you and say, you are now a regional manager, and we want to test this executive model. So let's
Mhm.
do it with 6. And so how many are you regional manager of?
Yeah, so there's 8 corporate locations. Um, so there's the original Bellingham, and I wouldn't say I'm as involved in that one as the other 7, just because of that one. Mike does go there once a week, but we kind of guide them together. And then Lee helps out with that one because his office is there as well. So that's kind of like a group effort in Bellingham. But we all have like kind of our lanes for that one location.
I see.
Um, yeah, so like Lee has kind of things that he works on, then I have the other things where I kind of do some higher level things that I kind of coach them with the other locations. But there are 7 that I am in day to day, um, all going over KPIs, making sure things are done right. I handle the marketing for all of them. So like we just set up a bunch of digital ads. So like we're in that now. They still do all their hiring. They run it on a day to day basis, but I am involved on the 7 on a daily basis with ops and checking in with them and making sure they're in the systems, and things like that. And there's the 2 in Belling, like I said, 2 in Washington, 1 in Connecticut, and then now there's 5 in Charlotte.
So the new ones that you've opened, is there a certain level that you'll try to get to and then kind of cap off and start to maintain so we have rapid growth up to a certain number?
Yeah, so we grow them as quickly as possible to 500,000,
Okay.
and then we'll switch to try to get some to profit mode at that point. Um, but if we have a GM that is a go-getter, an A player, like cream of the crop type of guy that like, okay, hey, he needs more, we will let them go to that 800 to 900, down close to a
Got it.
million, and let it be grow that way. But we're starting with the baseline of let's get it to 500,000. Good working GM, still in the field a day or two, managing the accrue the other 2 or 3 days. But again, if they have the capacity and they're good high performers, then we'll let them take it, double that size and go that 800 to a million.
So
And
you
that's
are,
where we will hard line stop it, is at that 800 to a million. We will not take it any higher than that.
I love it. So then you would just start more locations at that point.
Yeah, at that point we would honestly copy and paste the same kind of thing. Like we'd start up another, maybe on the south side of Charlotte or another city close by or whatever. And if one of those guys gets it to that level, then we would just say, okay, well, now you're going to manage these 5 locations or
Hmm.
6 locations, and they would become a regional as well.
Right.
And we
Well,
would just kind of develop that.
with Augusta though, after they've worked for an Augusta location for 2 years, we have the 3F program where they can start their own
Yep.
location. So if a guy is that good and he grows it up to 800,000, he's probably going to want to just go start his own rather than be a GM, wouldn't you think?
Absolutely. And we have a couple of them that are like that. That's what, like, one guy's like, nope, I don't want to be an owner, but I'll crush it. And he's a great GM so far. Um, he doesn't want to own right now. Maybe down the road, he said potentially, but right now he's like, I just like what I'm doing. Great. Well, then let's just keep rocking it out. But then I know I have another one who has adamantly said, I want to be an owner of multiple locations.
Yes.
But he's going to get in, he's going to learn everything. He's going to be able, like, I can mentor him and kind of coach him along. He's going to see the interaction, how a regional interacts with that. And he would just be my position of his
Hmm.
own locations. He would manage them from a higher level, higher GMs, and that's his goal. So you do have some that are like, yep, I want to be an owner. And if they do, then great. After 2 years, start a franchise and develop them and go. Like,
Hmm.
that's the great part about working for Augusta. Like, and I still have that availability to me as well. Like, if I want to start a location, I can say, "Hey, Mike, I'm gonna, go become a franchisee," and he could. And that's the
Right.
great thing. Like, you can stay an employee, or you can then also become an owner if you want. There's 2 different avenues, of growth and trajectory, and I think that's the highlight, is we cultivate this this whole dynamic where it's like, well, you don't have to just be a frontline employee. You become a
Right.
manager, an estimator, a GM, a regional. You can get into a leadership role, whatever it may be, or you can be an owner and become an entrepreneur because you already know the systems.
Right.
It becomes, to me, an easy transition. So there's so many different avenues to go, and they have that ability as GMs to kind of pick and choose which lane they want to go in.
So I think that's where it comes into play, where you said when you first spoke to Mike that it seemed
Mhm.
apparent that he was interested in building people, not just businesses
Yeah.
and making money. And the other quality, and that is a quality you have. And another quality I see in the two of you that I believe must be pertinent to what we've got going on is that neither of you are micromanagers. And thirdly, that you believe that you should trust until there's a reason not to trust. And so that is
Yeah.
why we can put so much trust in you. And then you, therefore, can put it so much trust in the GMs. They might not work out. We've had some that you have poured yourself
Yeah.
into and guided and just even recently you just realize they're not cutting it, they're not following the systems, and we have to pull them out and immediate action, and now you've had to jump back in and quickly try to so what's your mentality with something like that to jump back in? Is it like, I've got this, I'm going to run it till I get somebody else, but I'm not going to have a defeatist
Mhm.
attitude in the midst of me doing this? I've done it before, I can do it again, but in
Mhm.
the midst of it I've still got to find somebody else and trust that they're going to jump in and do this, right?
Yeah, and that's, like, and that's the thing. Like, and I tell when I hire a crew member or I hire a GM, I always tell them the same thing because we give them company credit cards, right? And they're driving our vehicles and all those things. So I tell them like, I trust you
Right.
until I can't trust you anymore.
Right.
Like I give them from day one. I'm very much like, here's all the trust in the world. But if you lose it, now we're having a different conversation. But I'll give it to you in the beginning because I don't want to be a micromanager. Like it's just more stress. I don't want to worry about those things. So I let them just take the reins and go. Um, but you have to be also on the flip side of that, you have to be willing to when you see somebody who's not maybe performing, cut it and cut.
Correct.
I don't want to say cut your losses, but you
Yep.
have to be able to pivot and change, be like, hey, this isn't working. We need to do something differently and be willing to go back and get your hands dirty, which like you have kind of alluded to, that's kind of where we're at right now is like,
Hmm.
you just got to get in and do the job. Like I'm going to find somebody that I can cultivate, that can be a leader, that can do the job because there are, like everybody thinks, oh, nobody can do this as good as me. I
Hmm.
guarantee there's probably 100 people out there that can do it better than you. They're not going to be as good as you. They're going to be better than you. And
Yep.
you want people to be better than you because it
100%.
makes your life and job easier, right? Like
Yes.
I'm training all these GMs to do better than me so that I don't have to do their job for them because I don't want to do their job. Like if I
Right.
hire somebody as a GM, I'm hiring them to run the location with me helping if they
Yep.
have questions and things like that, and I'm watching from afar and keeping track of the numbers and whatnot. But they're going to run the business. It
Hmm.
is like I like to say, it's their house. They're going to run their house. They're going to take care of business. I'm just going to help guide them if they need it. But if they don't, as long as they're in the systems, they're going to take care of it. And it's their baby. Um, but we need to make sure everybody is within the systems and things are good. And it's just too stressful to micromanage people. And
Yeah.
that's another thing Mike does great is he lets his people lead and do what they want. And like I genuinely want my people that work for me to do better than me. It will make my life easier. And it's just a testament to them of me being able to find good people. There are good people out there. You just have to put your ego in like I used to be an egotistical maniac back in the day. And like and my wife will tell you, like I had an ego. I had a very large ego. And now I'm just to the point where like that doesn't do anything except breed bad culture,
Hmm.
terrible environment, terrible leadership, and all of those things. So like I'm very adamant now, like build these people up to be better than you because then your job is just that much easier
Yeah. So
and everybody's more successful, and that's what I want people to be successful and do better for them than I did when I was in my younger years.
So when I that takes me back to the beginning questions I ask. It's a perfect transition because it's basically a transformative talk that you're saying is when you were in the position you were, all you saw was the bad. You're bringing them into this place. You never see them rehabilitate. You never see them leave as these positive people that have grown. But now it seems that your whole mentality has changed and that you believe in their personal growth, you believe in them. Somebody just doesn't have a change like that, you would think, not instantly. So, would you attribute that to your faith, or would you attribute that to coming into, or all of it together, or coming into something where other people do believe in people like that, but how have you transitioned that thought process?
So it did. It started with my faith, and which is very important to me. And like that's what kind of transitioned me, like, okay, I need to start loving other people just for other people. It's not
Mm,
my place to judge people. It's not my place to belittle people or any of those things. Like whatever they do, that's up to them and God. That has nothing to do with me. But I'm gonna love them either way, try to build them up, right? So it started there. But then I in a workplace, um, I really got into it at my previous employer. They were all high level like spec ops guy in the military. One was a lieutenant colonel. He was big on leadership.
mhm,
And I would say he was my first true leader that I was like, okay, I like his leadership style. So I
mhm.
got a little bit from him, but the majority of it from work was when I came into Augusta. It was, hey, they want people to promote. They want to encourage people. Like, and I hadn't seen that in this when
Yeah.
I was in law enforcement in the state. There was none of that. It was good old boy. Who do you drink beer with? Who are you hanging out with? Where are you going out on Saturday nights? Who are you partying with? All of those different things. Like I could get jobs because I was on SWAT
Mm,
from a guy
mhm.
that was a commander at another post just because we had a relationship because we kicked a couple doors in and you know did things we probably shouldn't have done.
Yeah.
But we had that relationship, right?
Yeah.
So now like that then that's not real. That's not true leadership and that's
Yes.
not true management. But I saw when I got to Augusta, it kind of all culminated together and said, okay, this is what it looks like, and not that faith isn't the real world, but this is what it looks like in an application
Yes.
purpose of business and people that
Yeah.
maybe aren't faithful, that don't have the business acumen, but you can develop those things. You can give
Yes.
those things to people and give those resources and tools. And I just saw it time and time again, like, oh, hey, this person was an estimator and now he's the GM. Like, this is awesome. Or like with Nick Reed, one of my favorite people to talk to, he was a field worker, now he's an owner. Like this is great. Like you're
Yeah.
promoting personal growth and leadership, and that it kind of all came together in a practical application.
Got it. Got it. That makes sense. So overall, your experience at Augusta on an umbrella level, how has it been?
It's A plus, without a doubt. It's the I've worked for 4 organizations like that. I would say like actually worked for, and it's by far the best organization I've worked for from a sense of like the leadership team developing people, the vision that Mike has as the CEO. Um, and again, and maybe this is why I get into it. It's a brotherhood. It is
Mhm.
even the other franchise owners, like they're not part of Augusta corporate as you call it, but every owner at conference at the Southeast meetups, like on Facebook group, it's what can I do to help you become better? How can we help each other to grow our businesses personally, financially, on a business relationship? Like how is that? But it starts at the top with it has to, as we like to say corporate, but at the corporate level,
Yeah.
and then it's trickled down to owners and then frontline staff. It's spread all the way from the top to the bottom. Um, and that's what I think is the best part about Augusta. And as long as we don't ever lose that, I think Augusta will be at the forefront from for here on out. So I would say there's nothing short of an A plus.
So Lee brings them in sales wise. So he vets
Hmm.
them and they vet us. So they basically are vetting us through years of watching the content and
Yeah.
watching us at Summit and things. So then when he does a call with them, he really observes, do they have the same kind of mentality? Do they talk well about their employees? If they
Hmm.
don't, they're not going to be a good fit with us. Do they care about growing their people? If they don't, they're not going to be a good fit with us. And so once they become franchisees, you do monthly coaching calls with them. So in your calls with them, is that the overall quality of the people that you feel that you're working with on a monthly basis?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the good thing is like so Lee brings them in and then like I also help with the training too. So
Okay.
like when they come to new franchisee training, I'm there as well teaching some of the classes and things like that, helping, you and Mike and Lee and Lonnie, like we're all in there kind of coaches. So I get to see them from that standpoint. And I think that's where you really get to see them shine and where you see Lee being so successful kind of filtering people is
Okay.
when they get amongst other people that have the same mindset, right? So then you start to see them interact with each other, and then you really see it pull together. And then we do the coaching calls on a monthly basis, and you start to see them, and I can dive a little deeper with them, and then you say, okay, now I see why Lee thought they were a good fit because they already know about us. Like you said, they've
Right.
been watching content, they've been, doing all this research because it's a big investment for them.
It
Like
is.
this is their family pouring their heart and soul into a business.
Yeah.
Um, but in the coaching calls, I'm able to get really deep into the conversations and pick their brains and see why they do certain things. And we're able to kind of, I don't want to say autocorrect, but kind of correct them back. Like, hey, that's the old way, but at Augusta, this is what's successful because it's been tried 120 times so
Mhm.
far, and counting. So it's like we really try to push that, and I'm able to see that in the coaching calls, and you
Mhm.
can see very quickly that I would say 99% of them are like, okay, this is for the good of the cause, and we're doing better, and we're
Mhm.
trying to be more professional. And it all starts with Lee, and then we continue it through the coaching
I
calls.
see. Okay. So, you personally, after having been with us now, what, 3 years? By
Two
this is
years.
2023, 2 years.
Yep. two
Do you
years. Yes, sir.
feel that there's been personal growth in you, like spiritually, the way you handle your family, the way you are with people? Have you seen a change in yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I feel I've changed most probably from a obviously like I enjoy the spiritual side of it, so I feel like I've grown a ton because like we'll do prayers, we'll do different things as a group. Like
Mhm.
whereas before I was like, I don't really know if you can do this and not outside your home or like those
Right.
because I didn't know how to feel and what was kind of appropriate. And then like I feel the number one change has been as a leader. It has taught me from books that I've done on Audible and everything else, like to try to put other people and develop other people more where I never really thought like that before
Yeah.
until I really started cultivating it on a professional level when I got into Augusta,
Yeah.
trying to make them even field guys, like field workers, like we don't want them to stay with us as field workers forever. But
Yes.
when they do leave, I want them better. I want them to be
100%.
better people. Like I always tell them, like and I have this little like speech I tell them where it's like, I don't care if you work here forever and you become a manager or you leave or whatever, but when you leave, I want you to be a better human being, whether
Yes.
that's spiritually, financially, as a husband, as a wife, whatever your role is in your personal life. I want you to be a better human being. And if I can help develop that and cultivate it, whether they leave and go to another company, then I've done what I want to do. And that is make them a better human being, whether that's Augusta or outside of Augusta.
Mhm.
And that I think I learned that in Augusta.
Mhm. So, moving forward, your long term goals for yourself and your family, do you have those goals, or is this moving so fast that you feel like you're going to walk right into whatever you need to in the future?
Yeah, that right there, the last part, I don't have goals because I just don't know. You could have asked me
Yes.
this in May, June. Well, what do we I don't know. Like
Right.
I really didn't know. I because when I started, I was like, okay, I'll buy Mooresville. Like originally, I had the option to
Right.
buy Mooresville. I
Yep.
could have bought Mooresville. I could start a 3F program. Um, there was no regional. There was no chance, to help out corporately, to help try. Like that wasn't there.
Yep.
I It's gonna look so much different 6 months from now,
For
and in a
sure.
year, it's gonna look significantly different, because of the growth every single year, like, we're growing so fast that I can't even fathom to think where we would be in a
Yeah.
year.
It's awesome.
So, for me, I'm just wide open, like, I tell Mike, like, "Mike, I'm all gas, no brakes, we'll just see where we go, and I'm coming along."
Yeah, that's such an awesome mentality. So, just to wrap it up a little bit, I would like to know if you could share some of your favorite audibles, podcasts, and
Mhm.
kind of what has benefited you in the past in that regard, and what you're currently kind of feeding on listening to.
Yeah, so, I'm a big Jocko guy,
Hmm.
just from the standpoint of the accountability.
Yes.
Like, he's a slow talker, so, like, sometimes I'm like, "Okay, man, we gotta get this moving." Like, you gotta listen
2.5
on, like,
speed.
2 or 3. Yeah, 2 or 3, but his and there's some people that don't like him because, oh, it's military and he's trying to make a buck off of it and all of this. But he's stripping away he uses military examples because that's where he was a leader in. But,
Right.
like, I love it because it if you surface level take it to surface level, he's teaching you to be accountable for your actions
Mhm.
and detaching from situations and putting people in leadership roles. And like I enjoy his stuff a lot. Um, but on the flip side of it, I'm a big David Goggins guy
Yep.
because I think sometimes you just have to keep your mouth shut, put your head down, and go to work.
Yeah.
Like, so like that's a little bit of the old school part mentality of me that I have is like sometimes you just gotta keep your mouth shut and go to work.
Yep.
It's gonna suck.
100%.
You have to like I don't care what profession you are in. There are times where you're like, I don't want to do this. This is terrible, and you're just gonna have to do it. And like I think Jocko has a little video, but you got to embrace the suck.
Yes.
It's just what it is. So those two guys I like a lot.
Mhm.
And maybe it's because of the military and the structure backgrounds that they have and the law enforcement background I had. Like, and maybe that's what it is. But they just there's accountability, which I love, the ownership, and then just sometimes, just as David Goggins says, you stay hard and just do your job and keep after it. Like you just have to keep moving forward sometimes, even if you don't want to. It's the right
Yeah.
thing to do. You stay
Yeah.
disciplined. Currently, I just finished Atomic Habits,
Yep.
which I really enjoyed.
That's good.
It is so simple. The premise of it is so basic. Um, but it makes a lot of sense, right? Like just keeping habits and you start and then they become long-term habits and such. So, um, and then I just started the one. I can't remember
The
who it's
one
by.
thing? Is it
Yeah,
called the
yeah, the
one
one
thing?
thing.
Yeah.
That's it. Yep, yep. So, and it's just basically, stuff for the 30 minutes I've listened to, it's just being laser focused and finding that one thing. And
Is it
that's
the
kind
one
of
thing
where
that you're good at or what's the preface?
no, I'm gonna have to look at it. I just started it. Like I literally just start. I'd have to look it up, but yeah, um, I can't remember the
I'll
guy's
listen
name
to it
now.
again.
Yeah, I'm sure you've listened to it,
I
but
have, I just need to listen
it's
to it
awesome.
again.
Yeah, it's good. It started off pretty good. It's been recommended to me by multiple people inside and outside of Augusta.
Okay.
Um, so like it holds a lot of weight when you get people from different avenues and different walks of life. They're like, "Hey, you got to check this book out." Um, So that's good. But that's what I'm currently working on. And I just started that
Fantastic.
one earlier this week.
Good.
Yeah. So I
And
try to have
so
something going at all times.
I love it. That is why we get along so well. So when you first came on, you would give me your opinion on something, and then you'd stop and you'd say, uh, "Sorry if that was too strong. That's just how I am."
Yeah.
And I said, "Oh no, no, I agree. I'll just bring the softness in and say the same thing you did."
Yes.
So we've worked
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
well
Because I
together.
don't quite have that filter yet. Like I'm still developing my deliverance. My
Yes.
delivering of the message sometimes is a little bit brash.
Sometimes you got
But
to use a scalpel instead of a sledgehammer.
yeah. Yes, absolutely.
So just to wrap up, could you share with us one of your favorite quotes? I'm sure you have a lot, but do you have a favorite quote?
Um I don't necessarily have a favorite quote. I just have like little kind of mottos kind of thing. Like, like I'm always like, don't be scared, get after it.
Love
Like you have
that.
to go. But like right now I say like the biggest thing I'm trying to really instill is like Jocko, that discipline equals freedom. And
Hmm.
it's just from a standpoint of if you are disciplined, whether it's diet, financial, whatever, like everything's it's restricting, it's not. Like it gives you that freedom. Like I can do whatever I want if I'm disciplined with my finances.
Hmm.
I can do whatever I want and feel better if I'm disciplined with my food intake. Like it just becomes this much better emphasis on life. So I'm really trying to be like, hey, like I fell off the wagon these last 2 days, but like every day 5 a.m. I'm hitting the gym.
I
So
love it.
like now I know like man I fell off that discipline. I'll get back on it today. Like
Yeah.
it then becomes this you got to be disciplined. And like I've been working with Nick Reed a lot on that, talking to him. Like it just becomes this stay disciplined and
Yes.
it'll equal the freedom in your life you want. And that's kind of what I've been trying to live lately. And that's the kind of my favorite quote
Mhm.
that I kind of try to my mantra, I guess you would say.
Yeah. Well, our whole purpose of doing these interviews is 100% to encourage other people on kind of the trajectory of how different men's lives have gone, men so far. I'm sure we'll have some ladies. But to see that how far somebody can come and the success they can have if they're with people that are of like mind. And I really appreciate your time today. I know you're really busy, and for us to meet, it had to be at 5 a.m. on a Saturday because we're both busy. But I just want to say thank you. And is there anything that you'd like to add or share at the end here for any kind of business owner or somebody who is working their way up as a small business as an employee, even or GM?
Um, no, I appreciate everything that you do, Liz, and I appreciate you having me on here. If I would say anything is like, and this is franchisee, business owner, GM, employee, whatever, um, like try to give more than you take.
Mm,
So give your employer a little bit more. Don't don't you don't need a raise because you did something above and beyond. Just do it because you just should be doing it. Like
mm-hmm,
continue and you will shine and you'll get everything that you deserve by just working hard and having a solid work ethic and making sure you're the simple things of being on time,
mm-hmm,
doing your job, doing a couple things that are above and beyond your job, and just showing like, hey, he's a great worker or she's a great worker. I'm going to create something better for them. And you're whether it's us as employers or you as an employee or whatever, like there's somebody you can kind of coach along, and they look at you, your coworker, whatever, like man, he is busting his tail or she is busting their tail. Like they deserve something more. And it I've never met anybody that's a hard, great worker that is trying to strive for to do better for themselves, but also help other people do better. That hasn't been rewarded. So if I have any advice, that would be my advice: is keep working hard, keep plugging along, because you will be rewarded, especially when you help out and go above and beyond.
and that, ladies and gentlemen, we'll wrap it up with that. And we thank you so much, Chuck. And you have an awesome day.
Appreciate it. All right, thank you, Liz.
Thank you.